Hi, Can1171 Designs here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a billboard tree out of a full 3D tree like this one. This is one of Lisa's cherry trees, and you can buy it from Hivewire 3D, but you can choose any tree you like. I'm going to use this one for this example. As you can see, it's pretty high res. And later on, we're using billboards. We are going to create a whole forest with these trees with no effort at all. So let's get started. First thing, let's get rid of the ground plane. You can do that from Display, Guides, Ground Plane, or just Ctrl G. What we want to do here is set our viewport size so that it's more or less square. That's because we're going to be mapping this as a texture over a square. So the closer we get to the proportion, the better. Okay, this more or less is what we want, and then we render this to see if we get a good framing. Let's put the light a little to the side, and this is a little trick. See these four colors here? I'm going to select, this is the, as you can see here, description on the top, this is the background color, and I'm going to set it to black. And this is going to be important if I want to create a billboard with only a single image. Now render again, and once render is done, I'm going to save it as tree 1. And I don't want to save as PNG because it's going to use transparency. And as you know, Poser does not support PNG transparency. So let's use PNG so I can keep the background black. Once I save, I have it here. As you can see, it's the tree render with a black background. And that's all I need for now. Let's clear this image. I don't need to save it. And now all I need is to load from the primitives the one-sided square. With that, on my scene, it doesn't look like much, but let's scale it up a little bit. This is going to be our tree, and it's all about materials. So, select the material from the tree here. Well, it's not a tree yet, but it's going to be one. I'm going to use this image we just saved as my diffuse map, and I'm gonna plug that to the diffuse color. And as you can see here, not much yet, doesn't look much of a tree. Let's create a bump map using a math function, and I'm gonna call this bump up a little bit, value 2. As you can see here, this is what it looks like. I'm gonna plug it into bump and leave it at full strength. Now comes the mask. This is where things get interesting. I'm gonna keep using the math function and call this my mask. I'm gonna set value 2 to 1. I'm gonna plug my diffuse to value 2. As you can see, nothing much going on yet. I'm gonna use it to control the specular, to control transparency, set transparency to 1. I'm gonna control the transparency edge, all with the same map. And to make it work as a mask, I'm gonna use the step function, which means right now we don't have much. So mostly black. That's because we have to use a very small value 1 step, and boom, now you have a texture there. And we did all that with a single image. Okay, let's go back here, and oh yeah, let me reduce the specular value to a very low value. I don't need it to be very shiny. And let's do a test render to see what it looks like. As you can see, there is a little black border around, and that we can adjust with this value here, maybe I have to make it 0.01 instead. Let's see if we got it better. Yeah, there you go. It's clean now. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna use the scatter tool to create a whole forest with it. So first of all, I'm gonna delete all my lights and add a different set. And I'm going to rescale. As you can see here, the ground plane by default is 400% its size. I'm gonna reduce it to 90, so it's not so large. And this billboard tree, as you can see, it's 2D now. I'm gonna reduce this a little bit like this, and that's about good. And then we're going to launch the scatter tool right here. So my square is gonna be my tree. I'm gonna put like 80 trees. Don't need rotations, don't need align to surface. Billboard, yes. Allow flipping, yes. I'm going to allow a little variation on size, like very big and a little smaller. And let's see what we get as we have it. As you can see, it populates very fast, even because each of these trees is now a single poly. Okay, I'm gonna select my camera and reduce the camera lens to 35, so I can see more. And as you can see here, as I move my camera, main camera, as I move my camera, the trees follow me. They point where my camera is. So if I put my camera here and do a test render, something odd is gonna happen. As you can see here in the back, everything turns black. What's happening here is that oh, by the way, I'm rendering with Superfly, and what happens is it doesn't have enough bounces on transparency to go through all these transparency planes to reach the back. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna edit this value. Here it is, the max transparency bounces. We're gonna increase this to 30. So the default value was 8. That's not big enough. Let's render again. And there you go. We can see all the way through the end. And that's what we wanted. As you can see, even though I have like 80 trees, I could even put 100. It wouldn't be much of a difference. Viewport doesn't slow down at all. It's still fast. So let's put this like in full screen, like this, and render it again to see what we get, like a panoramic view. And we have pretty much like a forest. Now, one thing I want to tell you about billboard trees is that as you tilt your camera up like this, the trees tend to tilt to a side. And that's because in Poser, at least with Poser, when you put a constraint, like a point at constraint into a tree, you can see it here, point at, it no longer obeys limits. You could put it to only rotate on the y-axis, but as long as you have a constraint like this, it's not going to respect it. So what you do to resolve the tilting of trees, which you don't want in your renders, is to bring your camera closer to the ground, and the trees are going to look straight again. That's a good hint, and it always works. And that's what I wanted to show you. Thanks for watching.